Next up, we have Andy Meddick, a member of the Victorian Parliament for the Animal Justice Party and has been a dedicated animal rights campaigner for many years. I personally know Andy, and he is one of the most trustworthy and good men I've ever met. I'm so glad that he is representing animals for everyone, including the animals, obviously, in Parliament. He is shaking things up in there, and it's not without pushback, but him and his team are doing an amazing job. We're very, very lucky to have him on our side, and we are very, very lucky to have him today at the Adelaide Vegan Festival. So please make him feel welcome. Give Andy Meddick a warm round of applause. Here he is right now.
There you go, bro. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, brother. Good on you, man.
Whew. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me here. This really is a very great honour. I like to walk around a bit, and I hope you don't mind. It sort of helps me concentrate a little bit. And one thing I will explain before I start is I'm a very proud alumni of the Billy Connolly School of Public Speaking, which is to say I might start on a topic and I'll go in a very broad tangent. But eventually I'll get back to what we're supposed to be talking about, so don't worry, just come along for the ride with me. The first thing I'd like to do is to acknowledge that the land we meet here today was, is and always shall be Milipitangara land, land of the First Nations people of the Kuna Nation. This yurta, this land that we meet on, is land of the First Nations people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that may be present here today. So, my campaign manager and my team have told me today that I have to speak on why politics matters, and I'll do that. But I'd like to talk about a few other things as well, and I'd like to acknowledge as well that while I stand in Parliament and I get to speak on all these things, these subjects, these issues that face non-human animals, not just in Victoria but across Australia and across the world, that's a very great honour. But what people don't see is the team and the work that goes on to get that to happen. So I have an amazing team. I have a Chief of Staff, Georgie Purcell, who's just the most incredible person. It's just a driven worker for animals. I've never met anyone like her. Bruce Poon, who's our National President, is also my political advisor. I have a research and policy advisor by the name of Dr. Tamsin Ramsey, a woman who has a brain the size of a planet. And we would get nowhere without her researching policy and finding out all the legal things that we need to know in order to write policy, in order to write motions, to write bills. She's ably assisted by Dr. Nadine Richings, also another academic. We also have Danny, who's our campaign manager, and Miranda, who handles all our media. So it's a big team for one person. So it's a great honour to be able to stand up there in Parliament and talk about all these issues, but I wouldn't be able to do it without that assistance. And that is my point to you here today. Just because one person gets to stand up in front of people and talk about all these different issues and how important they are ably assisted by a whole bunch of people. They are ably assisted by community. We have to work together. There's some talk going on in Victoria at the moment of the disparity and a bit of argument between different animal rights organisations. And this plays into the hands of the industries and the people that don't want to see non-human animals accorded the rights and the lives that they need to live, the rights and the lives that we enjoy. We must overcome these differences. We must begin to work together cohesively. And this is nothing new. Every great social justice movement in history has suffered this type of division. And I don't want to see it happen here, because the Adelaide, the Victorian, the Perth, the Darwin, the Sydney, the Brisbane communities need to come together and work if we're going to change this, if we're going to get the results that we need for our non-human animal brethren. So I'd like to cover off some of the things that we've been able to do this year. I've spoken in Parliament several times about different issues, and a couple of things that we've actually been able to achieve And we've got more on the cards coming, believe me. You just have to watch this space. But we've been able to get the guardianship laws changed around animals. Now in Victoria we have guardianship laws for a person who might be an elderly person who's suffering dementia, might be a person who's homeless, and it might be a person who is missing. But they have one thing in common in many instances, and that is that they have possessions, money, and animals that have been their constant companions through good times and bad. Now, where a court orders that that person can no longer have control of those things, they appoint a guardian to take control of those things and make decisions on behalf of that person. Previously, in the state of Victoria, that guardian never had to take into account the life of that animal or the wishes of that person surrounding that animal. So we were able to bring through 10 amendments to the guardianship laws that now insist that those guardians take into account the life of that animal, that they recognise that that animal, that non-human animal, no matter what species it is, has interests of its own, that its life is worth something. They must now take that into account and make decisions that are in those interests and in the interests of the person who was that animal's companion. We were able to secure $500,000 in funding for Wildlife Victoria. Now, if anyone knows who's travelled throughout country Victoria, would know you might see what looks like a standard road sign in yellow on the side of the road. It says, if you see injured wildlife, call this number. And there might be an image of a particular animal that might be inherent to that area or in greater numbers. Could be a kangaroo, could be a wombat, could be any wildlife species. But call this number. Now, what most people didn't know was that was Wildlife Victoria, who run a hotline, and they have a number of volunteers. They've been in existence for 32 years and they've never had a cent of government funding, not 1 cent. They've always relied upon their own money, volunteers and donations. We were able to successfully argue with the government that this was a terrible situation and that they now need to fund them. And we were able to get $500,000 a year for Wildlife Victoria so that they now have a 24-hour phone service. They've got more volunteers. They're able to train more volunteers. They're able to produce kits for rescue that they can now send out into country Victoria, so the resources are there. So we're really proud of that one. And probably the biggest one, and probably the most high-profile one, which was only just in the last few weeks, was that we were able to defeat ag-gag laws in the Parliament of Victoria. Extremely proud of that one. Because we all know the narrative that has been spread, not just in Victoria, but everywhere, this state, every state around Australia. In the face of animal activism, the pushback from industry and from government has been swift and it's been savage. The federal parliament ran through laws supposedly to stamp out animal activism and the work that people do behind the scenes to bring awful cruelty into the light so that people can see this for themselves, the public can see it for themselves. When in effect what this is, it's whistleblower laws. Because the effect flows on not just in animal activism. We're now seeing it. Everyone would have had their papers just this week and seen their front pages redacted, blacked out, right? The media is starting to work out that government, your federal government, my federal government, doesn't want the truth in any circumstances to get out there, because then you have an informed public and that informed public can make decisions that they don't necessarily want. And for us, that works in the area of animal activism. Every other state has followed suit. Minimum penalties, minimum prison terms, minimum fines, huge fines. So we were able to bring a situation into the Parliament where one of my, I hesitate to use the term colleague, but that's the term for another member of the crossbench that I sit on, where he brought amendments to the Criminal Justice Code where on a first offence, a person who is trying to bring animal cruelty into the light would have a minimum jail term of 6 months and fines in the order of tens of thousands of dollars. Something that most people in general life can't afford, all because they wanted to save an animal's life. So we were able to defeat that bill. And as I said before, it's something I'm incredibly proud of that we were able to get that done. And we were able to do so because we have a situation in our chamber where the government has 18, they don't have a majority, they rely upon 3 of the crossbench to get any legislation through. So we were able to successfully persuade the government that this was bad. This is a bad law. Government should not be telling magistrates and judges what they can and cannot do, that they cannot take into account any mitigating circumstances, that when someone stands before them, having taken footage of someone bludgeoning a baby goat to death with a hammer, that they cannot bring that before the public, that they should be jailed for letting the public know that this is going on. The government, which prides itself in Victoria on being progressive, saw sense in that, and they voted with us to knock that bill down. Yeah, you should. It's a really good thing. You should applaud them because they saw sense. It's really good. So, by giving you these examples, what I'm trying to say is that politics does matter. Now, whether you're involved in animal activism on any level, you're involved in politics because you are trying to bring an issue to the public awareness and you're trying to enact change. Real change only occurs, and these changes occur not just because of people standing in a square with 10,000 people and arguing for change. Political parties and governments don't necessarily listen to that because they also have other voices telling them other things. They have industry who are highly influential coming to them and saying, don't listen to those 10,000 people. They've got it wrong. We employ all these other people and we pay taxes in this order. You should be listening to us. So politicians become incredibly conflicted about what they should do. And that's why as parties they have party policy so that they're set within stone where they can and where they can't go. So your activism is a form of politics. What I do in that chamber cannot be done without the support of activists out there doing what they do. What I do in the chamber can't be done without the support of whistleblowers exposing all this animal cruelty. And I want to come back to that. Everyone would have seen the 7:30 report, yes, on the racehorses? Yep. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. Do you know every single politician that I've spoken to in the last week, every single one without fail from every single side of politics, every single federal parliamentarian, every state parliamentarian has told me how incredibly brave the people were that took that footage and exposed it in the media. But those very same people, our federal government is trying to jail for doing exactly what they just did. Does anybody else see the hypocrisy of that? That's why we need you to become politically active. How we enact these changes for our non-human animals is by having a united voice, by having a united community, by having a united movement. Every single one of you, no matter what part of it you're in. If you're vegan for the animals, that's great. You're part of us. If you're vegan for environmental reasons, you're part of us. If you're vegan for animal cruelty, great, come in. You're part of us. We only do what we do in politics so that we can give you a voice in the halls of power where those animals don't have a voice. Because at the end of the day, what has to change is the law. The law can only be changed by acts of parliament, by legislation. By uniting together, by all coming together, we can get these changes done. But we can't do that when we're fighting each other. Recognise that someone else and the way that they do things has worth and value, and encourage them. Encourage each other and become involved in each other's campaigns. A very good friend of mine and a man I greatly admire, he and his wife, Philip and Trix Wallen. Philip has said that this movement that we have, veganism, saving animals, is the world's next largest social justice movement since the human rights movement. And he's absolutely correct. I'm a very pragmatic man. I like to listen to science. I like to make decisions based upon facts. But I like to also put emotion into everything that I do, because you can't just simply be about the facts. You have to know how people are feeling. You have to know and put yourself in the place of those non-human animals when they're waiting in line to be slaughtered, when they know what's going to happen to them next. You have to feel that. There's been a lot of talk. We've seen Extinction Rebellion. We've seen all these things going on all over the world, and this is great. This is a great movement, and it's a great way of galvanising people, but there's one thing that they're missing. One very key thing. So I've been studying climate change for a long time. I first started looking at the United Nations Council on Climate Change reports from 16 years ago, when the first one they brought out, and they spoke about animal agriculture. And they talked about that the world needed to have a 0.01% shift away from animal agriculture. And the next year it was 0.2, and the next year it was 0.5, and the next year it was 0.7, and so on and so on and so on, until we get to a point now where we have the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which Australia, by the way, has 2 representatives on from our federal government, that now says, because we didn't listen to them, that worldwide we have to move 20% away from animal agriculture to save the planet, to stop that 2-degree threshold warming that we can't come back from, when everything would just increase. And my point, I guess, with Extinction Rebellion is I want them to listen to that. I want every government to listen to that. My electorate is a very different electorate. It's the second largest in Victoria, and it comprises of a mix of cosmopolitan or city-based people and country. Its largest population base is the city of Geelong, Australia's largest regional city, and growing. But its largest geographic base is farmland, all out to the west of Victoria, all the way here to the South Australian border, 2/3 of the way up towards the Northern Territory. So I have to go out and speak with farmers all the time. And I keep talking to them about this, and I keep talking to them about how we want to work with them. We want to help them with this change. We want to help them move away from animal agriculture that is not earning them money anymore. They're going down the drain. Drought, economic pressures for both internally and externally are seeing them not earn the money that they used to earn, and their animals are suffering as a result. People are leaving the land. We don't want them to leave the land. There's generations of knowledge of how to farm there. We just want them to farm something different, and we want to help them to make that transition. We want to help them make that transition to plant-based agriculture. And we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes with international companies wanting to come to this country to set up shop, because they realise that the world has to change too. And they realise there's also economic advantages by coming to a country like Australia where there's a burgeoning market. So we're helping them there. Politics matters. We can only do these things because we're in Parliament. Outside, we can go and stand and we can have rallies and we can have these people making all these points, and people come and make fantastic speeches and they're impassioned and they're telling everybody all the right things. They have the truth and they're telling the truth. But inside those walls, they don't necessarily listen. They can agree with you, they might meet with you, but they won't necessarily take the action that you want. We have, because we now have 3 elected members of Parliament, we have what's known as political leverage. We are sat with these ministers, we are sat with these other parliamentarians, and we're able to say to them, you have this amazing piece of legislation, we really like that. It's really good, love to help you with it. Really would love to help you with it. We don't quite like that bit. Do you reckon you can change that? And then I'm okay. And so you help them. You help them change their legislation to be better. And by doing so, and we can only do that because we are now sat with them and we work with them every single day. Myself, Emma Hurst, Mark Pearson, we work with these people every single day, and we're starting to change hearts and minds within those walls. We can then also bring things of our own. And because we've shown these politicians who do operate in a bubble, you know, everyone's heard about the Canberra bubble. Every parliament in this country has a very, very intense small area, and people they tend to get caught up in politics and not life, and don't have enough life coming in to influence what they think and what they do. They operate in that bubble. So now we're able to tell them, we're able to give them all this information that they won't necessarily have paid attention to before, and they also understand that now they have to work with us. And we are changing their hearts and minds. And we're going to make some great changes too. We're having some small changes along the way, and this is what people also have to understand, and I hope they do. I proudly tell people, and I proudly make speeches in Parliament everywhere and tell people, yes, I am a vegan politician, and that drives what I speak about and my feelings towards everything. And I let them know that. But these people are working in point A, and we want them to go to point Z. And I want them to do it yesterday. But they won't do it yesterday, so we have to take them on this little, and I hate this word because it's all those, you know, different reality TV shows and things. We've got to take them on a journey. And we do. We have to enlighten them that little bit every time. And so we make incremental changes. And in the politics, that's where we are moving. We can't make massive, monumental changes straight away. And as frustrating as that may be to a lot of vegans, and as frustrating as it is to me, because believe me, I sit in that chamber, and those of you who might watch it on Hansard might see me sitting there, and I'm smiling, and I'm nice and polite, and I'm not saying a word, and you don't see what I do when I get out of that chamber and I go back to my office. And I scream at the walls sometimes in frustration at what they won't do, what they won't listen to. But we are making changes. And one of the other things that I'm proud of is I was able to get elected to the board of Vic Health. And as a result of that, currently underway in Victoria is a review of all food in Victorian public hospitals. And we expect that one of the findings that will come out of that is that all processed meats will no longer be on the menu in public hospitals in Victoria as a recognised carcinogen by the World Health Organisation. Thanks. We also continue our fight against the scourge in this country that is 1080 poison. Now, that's a long campaign. I've been fighting that one myself for around about 15 years. And people come and go on that, and we have, again, great differences of opinion in how we go about things. But I'm going to stay the course on that, and we'll be having a concerted campaign within the Parliament next year, and I'll be speaking about it next week in Parliament as well. What we're also doing, and our biggest run this year, has been about duck shooting. Victoria and South Australia remain the only two states where recreational duck shooting is still a thing. We have a progressive Labor government in Victoria, and every other state that's banned duck shooting has been done by Labor governments. We believe we're really close, and we've pursued it down several different angles to push the government into a position where they can no longer say no. And we believe we're very close, and I hope to have some great news for you in the coming months. That's the other part about politics, is nothing happens fast. The wheels turn, but they turn really slowly. It's like having a 1954 Morris versus a 2019 Tesla. So that's really where we're at, but I'd like you to understand as well that politics does matter, and you've got a great crew here at the AJP in South Australia. You guys ran an amazing federal election campaign here, and you so nearly got a senator into federal government, into federal parliament. That was so close. You need to get behind them. Because what everyone needs to understand in politics within those walls and without is that people like us, vegans, we're not scary people. We're not terrorists. We're not invading people's homes and scaring their children. We're your doctors, we're your lawyers, we're your cafe workers, we work in hospitality, we work in the building industry, we work in every single phase of your life. You would be working next to a vegan and you wouldn't even know. Now that's a scary thought, isn't it? So I hope I haven't bored you to tears. But if I can leave you with one thing, and then I'm happy to take questions if anyone wants them, is that keep your passion going. You're doing what you're doing. You're living how you are living, and you are saving animals' lives every single day by just being who you are and being passionate about non-human animals. Keep that passion going. Never lose sight of what it is that you're trying to achieve. Even if it's just being kind to the person next to you. Never lose sight of that. And I'd like to just bring your attention. There's a guy I walked into when I came in the gate this morning. And he's indicative of a number of people who are forgotten in our society. And his name's Garfield. And he's up there selling the big issue. He's experiencing homelessness right now. And I spoke to him and I bought him a coffee and I asked him how many issues he sold. And he said, not many. Now, Garfield's not alone. There's homeless people everywhere. And some of them are in a position where they can sell the big issue and they can make a little bit of money. It might get them somewhere warm to sleep for the night. But this guy is the happiest man I've ever seen in my life. He is rapt to be here amongst a bunch of people who are kind and compassionate, and he understands that that's what the values of vegans are. We are kind, compassionate people. So if you see Garfield, buy a copy of the big issue. Give him somewhere to sleep tonight. Because I also follow one very, very simple phrase that's from a friend of mine who I admire greatly, and that lady's name is Jo MacArthur, who had a book out that's called We Animals. And she says, we are all animals, all of us, the non-humans and the humans. We're here together on this planet and we have to survive together. If we don't learn to survive together, if we can't show kindness and compassion to each other, how on earth are we going to expect to show it to non-human animals? We have to embrace each other. We have to understand we're part of the rich tapestry that makes up this tiny little blue dot in space. So please go and see him, buy a copy, give him somewhere to sleep tonight. Let him buy a hot meal. Because that guy is exactly the same person that you're speaking to in your workplace, that you're trying to get to not drink dairy milk anymore, that you're trying to get them to not eat a steak. That's him. Show him that same compassion, those same arguments that you're bringing to that situation. And together, we will be part of the solution and we'll get it done. So thanks very much for listening to me. I hope I didn't bore you to tears. So I was supposed to be a Q&A, I think, as well, so I'm sort of winging it here a bit. So if anyone does have any questions, I'm happy to take them, or I'm happy to just walk out there and talk to you. I'll be walking around. Part of what I do, I see it as a responsibility. This is my job, to talk to people. If you want to ask me any questions, come and see me. I'll talk to you. Don't worry about chewing my ear off. I'll be here all day. I'll stay here all night if I have to answer your questions. I'm more than happy to. So thanks again. I'm waiting for someone to come up. I don't do dancing or singing, by the way. My photo's up in places all around the place. If you see this man dancing, don't approach. Call the police. Have we got them out there? Have we got an MC? Nope. Here he is. I'm done, mate.
You're going to do some Q&A?
Yeah, if people want to ask questions, okay. Absolutely. Hey, yeah.
Hello? All right, yo, thanks so much, Andy. Really appreciate you sharing all that with us all. If there's any questions, anybody got any questions for Andy about what's going on in Parliament, his history, anything at all that you guys want to ask, then just put your hand up and I'll race over to you, and yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Where? Oh.
Legislative Council
Anybody?
Victoria, Upper House.
He must have covered everything, man. Good work, Andy. Oh, hang on a sec. We've got one over here.
I think we've got a question. Yep.
How were you inspired
Talking about
to
emotions,
start helping
really.
animals?
What do you do? I can't speak.
What was that?
Oh.
How were you inspired?
So the question from, what was the name, sorry? Vivian. The question was, how was I
Awesome.
inspired to help? start helping animals? Well, I was inspired by a number of different things, but I think if I try to make it in simplistic form so I don't take up too much time, I've been working in the building industry prior to getting elected for 21 years. And we talk in the industry about having, in Victoria anyway, what we call a 1 in 10 moment. All right? And what that is that it's judged on the fact that our industry kills someone every 10 days. Okay, so everyone in their career gets a 1 in 10. You get one. So I had 3. I had the radial artery severed in my left arm. I had a 6-metre fall and I had my left hip smashed and my left shoulder collapsed in on itself and smashed my clavicle, and all the ribs on that side were broken. And I also broke my right ankle at one point as well. So during that recovery period, I'd go out to where the yard was for the construction company to work with. This is what you do: work safe, have you come back, you go through rehab and you go to these places. And you work in the yard doing odd jobs. So the yard that I was working in was stationed behind a pig slaughterhouse. And every day for months, all I would hear was the screaming of those pigs. Because that noise, there's something inherently human in that sound. And that, I think, is what people who aren't vegan need to listen to. They need to hear the cries of animals in pain. They need to understand what that means. Those are emotions. Non-human animals are exactly the same as human animals. They all have the same thing. We all feel the same. We love. We have family. They do all the same things that we do. And when they're in pain, they scream and they cry. And they know when something horrible is going to happen to them, and they were screaming in fear every single day. And I just could not take it anymore. I couldn't. And I decided that, because up to that point, I'd also been a trade union activist as well. And it was that point that I decided I could no longer be part of a system that also struck down non-human animals, that kept them suppressed, that their rights were important, that their rights to family, that their rights to having lives that were inherently of interest just to themselves. That was an important thing, that they had interests that were important to them, and they had every right to have them, regardless of anybody else's interest in their lives. That's what really inspired me. Thanks very much. Cheers. Great question.
Thank you for...
You're right, mate. Take your time. Okay. I love your jacket, by the way. It's cool, all those badges.
Thank you for being a vegan.
That's my pleasure. Ta. I might just come and sit down. That might be easier.
I just want to shake your hand first of all for all that you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
I'm from a rural background.
Yep.
I live in a rural area. It disturbs me to find an animosity in the animal movement, particularly with city people against farmers.
Yep.
What advice can you give me to be able to handle this situation, because it really gets me down?
And that's a really great question. Have a seat. It's a really great question, because what we're working against here is not just breaking down that barrier between ourselves as human beings, right? There's a narrative that's being run by industry groups and by different governments that we are at odds with each other, right? That we are enemies, because that suits the particular agenda, right? The political agenda. Because you have to understand, you have a federal government at the moment that just wants to keep getting re-elected so they can keep, they can keep on their political agenda. So to keep doing that, they've decided to go down a political strategy of creating an us and them environment, because they've worked out that there's a culture in Australia, not just Australia, it's in America as well, that farmers are an untouchable group of people. There's this lionising of, and it started to happen after the First World War. There was this imagery of the sunburnt farmer with his hat on, he's got his sleeves rolled up and his shirt's down to here, and he's out there working in all kinds of weather and doing all these things, and that was a real incredible thing and something to be applauded. And what they do out there, that's great. That it's tough work. It's tough to be on the land. It really is. But we can have both. We can recognise that the work that they do is really tough, that they do supply food. We like it to be plant-based food, but they do supply food to the rest of the country, right? And that they go through their own struggles. okay? All the struggles that strike humanity in a city life, alienation of people happens out there as well. And I'll give you a great example. So we passed laws this year in Victoria around birth certificate reform. Now that birth certificate reform was for people who were transgender or non-binary or didn't recognise traditional sexuality as how they were as people, so that they can change their birth certificate to reflect that. So then they can go and get legal documents that reflect that. Driver's licence, passport, etc. Okay? So we passed laws to give them those rights, those inalienable human rights to represent themselves in public and in private as who they know, who they really are. So I stood in a field in a place called Nil with a farmer surrounded by lentils. A man who's been on that land for generations. He's the last of his generation, the last of that family to work that land. This farmer's name is Georgie, not George. Georgie stood there, all 6'4" and rippling muscles, bawling their eyes out, knowing that he has to sell that farm, and I say he, they, has to sell that farm because to see a doctor, they have to travel nearly 150 kilometres to find one that won't out them as who they are to the local community. Selling that farm because they know that they can go and buy a place in Melbourne and be who they are, so that they're comfortable living their lives. And I use that as an example because farmers, people in rural communities go through all the same pressures that everybody else does. They have, they have youth suicide. They have drug addiction amongst their youth. They have crime. They have all the same things that we have. But in their isolation, it's not easy to go and talk to somebody about it. It's not easy to lift that burden. Vegans are kind, compassionate people. We need to extend that. We need to ignore that rhetoric that's being put out of creating an us and them society by bringing farmers in to where we are and talking to them just on their level, just talking to them as human beings and letting them know that we recognise that they have these pressures, that they get sad, that they get depressed, they get upset, they get angry, and they have family pressures as well. We need to understand that they're human beings and we need to work with them in that compassionate way. And that'll go a long way because if we can do that, then they'll ignore the rhetoric that's coming out. They'll understand it's not us and them. They'll understand that it's we animals all together. It's a great question. Thanks. Ta. Sorry, mate.
How you going?
Good.
Nice to meet you. I just want to say thank you for all your work you've done. And me and my partner, we actually voted for the first time ever because of your speeches and stuff on Facebook. We never even...
But we don't usually like voting, but
yeah.
if you're up, we wanted to. So
And-
joined. And
Do you mind if I ask? Do you mind if I ask how old are you?
I'm 24.
Yep.
26.
Okay. I just want to... This is great that young people are here talking about this, and I just want to make this point too, is that traditionally in Australia, there's a voting block of people who are the most disaffected in this country, and that is people aged between 18 and 27 years old. They are people who are university educated. They're either just going into university or just coming out, and they have that because they're disillusioned with politics and disillusioned with politicians in general. Okay, so, but my advice to them is, and in the last 6 months I've given 3 lectures at Monash University in Melbourne about this very subject, to different societies like the Law Society, etc., etc. And the point is this: you are the single largest emerging voting bloc in this country. Don't be disaffected. If you see problems out there that you think need to be solved, you can be the politicians that solve them. Get yourself involved in a political party. Now, you might not necessarily want to join the AJP. You might feel that the Greens are a better suit to you, that Labor are a better suit to you. It might not be whoever, but get involved, get yourself pre-selected, get into Parliament, because the problem with Parliament, in every Parliament in this country, is that it's full of middle-aged white guys making decisions for people that they don't really represent that demographic. We need more women in Parliament. We need more people of colour. We need more young people. We need people coming in who can represent those arguments and make the changes that everyone else is too scared to make. So that's my advice to you. Please do that and talk to all your friends about doing the same.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So,
Can we get a picture of you?
yeah, sure. So, this is... quite embarrassing. I'll just put that down.
Hi. Just following up on, there's been a lot of issues with wombats over the last several months in SA, Tasmania and Victoria. Is there any follow-up on the story about the hunting lodge in Victoria?
Yes, there is, and I can't tell you. I'd love to be able to tell you, but all I can say is there's an investigation underway, and I can't comment on what that's going to be due because it potentially will come before Parliament, before the court.
Okay, lovely. I'm just glad to know that something's still being...
Absolutely, something is being done, and I can tell you the Environment Minister is all over it, and she is, let's say, rather annoyed.
Good. Okay, lovely. Thank you
Okay,
very
cheers.
much. Thanks.
No one else I can escape and go and eat, is that okay? All right, cool. No worries. And look...
Annie.
Oh,
Wait,
sorry, mate,
bro.
sorry.
No,
Where
I'm
are
over
you?
here.
I can't see you.
What's up, man?
Okay.
There's actually one more question someone asked in the crowd. They said, it was from Alex, and she asked, how do you deal with all the emotions that come up? You know, how do you deal with sort of being, you know, knowing all the horror that's going on? What do you do with all that? How do you exist in this world?
Look, that again, that's a really great question. I am... My wife and my family will tell you by nature I'm not a very patient person. I'm actually quite impatient. But you know going into this job that you have to keep your mouth shut sometimes. You have to not let that emotion out. You have to let these people say all these horrible things. Because everybody will have seen, people will have seen snippets of it, like Question Time, Federal Parliament, yeah? Or Question Time in any state parliament, where everybody's screaming at each other, insults, terrible stuff. It's childish, it's immature, and it's not what taxpayers in this country deserve. So I made a deal with myself that I wouldn't get involved in that, that I would sit in that chamber and no matter what was going on, I wouldn't get involved. And it's difficult because for an impatient person, I have to internalise all of that emotion. I have to internalise all that anger. And as Claire Mann will tell you, that this is not a healthy thing, okay? So at some point, I have to let that out. And one of the ways that I do that is, and I've found a great way to do it, rather than letting it out as anger and shouting and carrying on, is there's a place down near me called Winged Horse, Equine Therapy. And I go there and I go to a farm sanctuary near me called Willow White. And I also on occasion get up to Pam Ahern's place, Edgar's Mission. And I go out and I sit down and I interact. I just let the animals come and if they want to nudge me, well then that's great. And I just try and let it out. I just try and let that emotion out, just easily and gently. And that's a learning curve for me, right? Because we're all evolving, right? We're human beings, okay? When you're young, you know, and you're 17 years old and you're hanging out with your mates and stuff, it's easy to get angry about things and you yell and scream and you take that aggression out on a football field or something like that, you know. But as you get older, you learn that this is not necessarily the way to go because some people get involved in bad situations, you know. They'll hang out in nightclubs or pubs, they get involved in these groups and they get in fights, you know. They get in physical fights, which are not good. Okay, and this is part of the human condition that there's aspects of society, particularly male culture and toxic masculinity, where this happens, right? And then they take it out on women as well. And we have to change all of that. We have to change the way that we view things. And the way that we do that and the way that I've learnt that this has to happen for me, and I hope it happens for others, is that if you internalise that, it eats you up inside. You have to do something with it. You have to get rid of it. And for me, that's going out and getting back in touch with those non-human animals. Because what I've found, particularly at Winged Horse, is that I can sit there on a chair with my eyes closed and think about all these things, these horrible things that are happening, and they are in tune, and suddenly you open your eyes and you turn around and there's 6 or 8 horses who are just staring down at you like that and going, it's all right, buddy. we know how you feel. It's cool. So get back in touch with those animals. And for other people, it might just be if you've got a companion animal at home like a dog or a cat, it might just be so simple as to coming indoors at night with all of that anger or all of that sadness and just pouring it out to them because they understand. They do. They listen and they understand. And if they didn't, why would we be so upset when their time on this earth passes away? Why would we be so upset? Why would we get, so sad? It's because we recognise there's something in us that recognises that they are part of us, that we have this connection. And that's how I get rid of that. That's how instead of going and screaming at the sky, But when something good happens too, like when we got the gag bill done, right? I couldn't stand in the chamber and yell up and stand up and go, yay, which I wanted to do. The clerks looked very badly on that. So I walked out of the chamber, and in our chamber it's very much run along the old English, it's like the House of Lords, okay? So you have the President, who's the Queen's representative, so every time you enter the chamber or when you leave, it's... And then I left, and they closed the doors behind me, and I was out in the hallways doing this. I told you I couldn't dance. I told you there were laws against me dancing. But it was great. It was fantastic to let that happiness, that emotion out. Don't internalise it, find a way to get rid of it. And I think if we use it to get, if you find ways to get that negative energy out by getting back in touch with non-human animals and talking to them and just letting that energy flow out, they'll help you through that. And that's how I do it. So cheers, mate.
Thank you. Thanks, brother. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for giving such thorough answers to all these questions. Oh, and there's one more question right here.
I've got a question as such. I just wanted to introduce myself and meet you.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
For the AJP in the federal election.
Oh, fantastic.
I was one of the people behind Louise Pfeiffer that we hope to get into the Senate.
And she'll get in next time. These people out here, they're going to back you up, right? They're going to. Every single one of them is going to vote for Louise in the next election. And Louise, yeah, you're standing, okay? She doesn't know it yet, but she does now.
I'm sure she will.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thanks for your efforts.
And I've been liking whenever you've met Bullsnut that I've seen anyway on Facebook.
Thank you.
But I'm very sort of in the crowd, I think. Anyway, it's lovely to meet you, and it's been wonderful to hear you speak.
Cheers. Thank you.
Very much for all that you do.
Okay. No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right.
Anything else you want to say, Andy?
No. Do you want a hug? Can I give you a hug?
All right, let's give Andy a massive round of applause for all the work he has done, is doing, and will continue to do. Thanks so much, brother.
No, thank you, mate. Good on you, buddy. Cheers.
All right, everybody. The show goes on.